So what is Session Zero? Why is it important? Well, today we're going to go over this topic and explain how it can be an essential key component to running a successful campaign. Session Zero is basically a pre-campaign meeting to establish ground rules, set expectations, foster open communication. Its purpose is to discuss boundaries, create characters, and lay a strong foundation for the game. Session Zero serves as the groundwork for a successful campaign. It's very important for creating a cohesive group and avoiding conflicts down the road. In today's video, we're going to go over 5 key components for Session Zero. We're going to go over player expectations, character creation, house rules, campaign tone and style, and scheduling and commitment. And with that, let's dive deeper into these topics. So for player expectations, we need to align the expectations of the gameplay with the player's expectations. So for example, if you plan to make a roleplay heavy game, you need to express to the players that there's going to be a lot of roleplay opportunities, there's going to be NPC interaction, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to grow and dive deeper into the depth of the game. If it's combat focused, you might express that it's going to be combat heavy and that they just need to be very aware of what their character is capable of, features, special abilities, spells, anything of that nature, just to help the game flow. You should encourage a discussion on what each player wants to get out of the game. This could be character growth, epic battles, anything like that. If they're here to hack and slash, or if they're here to feel triumphant and they're just along for the journey and the ride, you need to make sure this aligns with the type of game you want to run. If it does not, either you need to adjust the type of game you're going to run, or your players may need to find a better table that's suited for the type that they want to play. It is very unlikely that all of your players are going to want to play the exact same way. You're not likely going to have a whole group that wants to roleplay heavy or a whole group that wants to be combat heavy. And you will run into a good handful that want a good portion of both and they want it to be a balanced gameplay. That's perfectly fine. You just gotta meet in the middle with them and find a common ground. If you have several that want to play combat heavy, but maybe 1 or 2 that would rather roleplay heavy, that's fine. You can set up encounters for both. This is an open group discussion, so everybody is already aware that each person may want something different. You need to look at the people who want roleplay heavy and say, hey, sometimes you might have to roleplay during combat encounters. And then you look at the combat people and say, hey, sometimes we're going to have sessions that are roleplay heavy and there may not be a whole lot of combat. Character creation. Here you're going to help guide your players into creating characters that fit well with your campaign's plot, setting, and tone. You will possibly go over creating backstories that can be interwoven into the campaign's main plot. You want to encourage your players to balance their party composition. You don't want a bunch of tanks and you don't want a bunch of spellcasters. You want to have a good mix so that your campaign party is well adapted for the setting and what's to come ahead. House rules. It is extremely important to establish any house rules that you may have implemented that differ from the original 5e rules. Most people have very different house rules, so it's very important to go over, critical hits, critical fails, homebrew content, whether there's gonna be homebrew or it's mostly by the books. All of this needs to be discussed here at Session Zero. At some point, you're gonna have a disagreement on rules, even by the book rules. Everybody reads it and takes from it differently. Everybody perceives it slightly different. So you need to go over how rulings are going to happen, on-the-fly rulings in game. Typically what I would do is you make a ruling and then look it up later and you can adjust your future sessions based on what you found out during your research. Campaign tone and style. Here we're going to talk about what your campaign is going to be like. Is it going to be dark and gritty? Is it going to be hilarious and comical? Is it going to be lighthearted, epic fantasy? This is where we need to express what we're looking to achieve. It's extremely important to maintain consistency when it comes to tone, so that way you don't have a campaign that's just all over the place. And you need to express this with the players and let them understand so that they can decide on whether or not they want to be a part of that type of campaign. The tone of your campaign can impact gameplay and player immersion. If you have a dark and gritty tone and then you wind up making something funny happen and everybody busts up and starts laughing, that's going to take out of the immersion of the darkness of your campaign. So we need to be pretty conscious while we're doing our session prep to make sure that our tone stays fairly consistent along the way. Unless discussed in session 0, you talk about bouncing around between tones, then that's perfectly fine. Scheduling and commitment. It is very important to set a regular scheduled day or time frame for playing your sessions. If it's weekly, that's fine. Make it the same day within a certain time frame. If it's bi-weekly, monthly, however you want to do it, just make sure it's consistent. Make sure that everybody at session 0 has the capability to make that time frame work. If you fail to have a regularly scheduled game session, your campaign is 95% likely to fizzle out and die. Don't get me wrong, things come up. People have families, people have work lives, people have things outside of D&D that come up and affect their ability to show up and play during game session. When this happens, you need to discuss how you're going to go about it. Whether their player becomes an NPC for the day, whether their player goes off and does their own thing. In the next session, you have to build what they were doing and explain to the group why they were missing. And that's going to do it for session 0 tips. Down in the description, I've included a link that you can download a checklist to run and print off for your own session 0, so that way you don't miss anything. Be sure to come back for future videos. We'll go over prepping for your first session, running your first session, and if you guys have any specific requests that you would like me to go over, or if you just want to share some experiences from previous session 0, drop a comment below.
If you enjoyed today's video and you'd like some more Dungeon Master tips, consider joining me on my journey of mastering the dungeon. Comment, like, and subscribe for more.